Martha felt the fourth rejection letter burning through her pocket as the stagecoach shuddered to a stop at Devil's Ridge Station. 3 weeks crossing from St. Louis, her bones rattled loose, her dignity hanging by threads thinner than her worn glove seams. But it was the date on that letter, her 38th birthday, that cut deepest. Too old for childbearing, Mr. Hammond had written. A man needs sons. Dust devils spun across the platform as she gathered her courage with her carpet bag. The other passengers had departed at the previous station, leaving her alone with the driver's pitying glance. You sure about this? Ma'am, next coach back east leaves Tuesday. Quite sure. But her hand trembled as she descended, and not from the mountain altitude. Through the depot window, she glimpsed her reflection travel-stained dress, hair escaping its pins despite her morning's efforts. She looked exactly like what she was, a woman running out of options. The platform stood empty except for a single wagon, its paint faded to the color of old bones. No one waiting. Martha's stomach clenched. Had Mr. McKenna reconsidered already? The advertisement had been sparse. Man of property, seeks capable woman, mountain living, must work hard. She'd written back immediately, mentioning her age up front. His response had been 3 lines, age matters less than competence. Stage arrives Thursday. We'll meet. Now, Thursday's sun beat down on empty planks. Martha approached the wagon, noting the worn but quality construction, the well-tended horses despite their humble appearance. Someone cared for what they had, even if it wasn't much. She set down her bag and walked around the wagon, studying details: mended harness, clean water bucket, a rifle polished to dull shine. You'd be Miss Hartley. The voice came from behind, deep and measured. Martha spun, hand to her chest. The man stood in the depot's shadow, so still she'd mistaken him for part of the building. He was taller than expected, broader, with dark hair needing a barber's attention and clothes that spoke of function over fashion. Not handsome in any conventional sense, his face too weathered, his nose clearly broken at least once, but his eyes held a steadiness that made her breath catch. Mr. McKenna. He nodded, moving forward with an economy that suggested controlled strength. No flourish, no bow, just purposeful steps. He lifted her carpet bag and trunk as if they weighed nothing, placing them carefully in the wagon bed. Long journey from St. Louis. Yes. He studied her for a moment, not the dismissive glance she'd grown accustomed to, but an assessment. Taking in her practical boots, her mended gloves, the way she stood despite exhaustion, she found herself straightening under that gaze, lifting her chin. Mountain road's rough. 3 hours up. I'm not fragile, Mr. McKenna. Something shifted in his expression, surprise, perhaps approval. He gestured to the wagon bench. When she moved to climb up, he offered his hand, not hovering, not insisting, just offering. She took it, noting the calluses, the careful strength as he helped her up. The first hour passed in silence except for wagon wheels and horse breath. Martha gripped the bench as they climbed, the road narrowing until one side dropped away into a valley that seemed to fall forever. She'd never seen anything like these mountains, wild and harsh and somehow clean. The fourth rejection letter crackled in her pocket when she shifted. There's water in the canteen, Thomas said, his first word since they'd left the station. She drank gratefully, tasting metal and something sweet mint perhaps. When she handed it back, their fingers brushed. Both pulled away. Another hour of climbing, the air thinning, her lungs working harder. Thomas slowed the horses without comment, letting them rest more frequently. She wanted to say she didn't need coddling, but found herself grateful for the pauses. Why did you answer my advertisement? The question came suddenly, though his tone remained neutral. Martha considered lies, polite evasions. But something about the thin air, the vast space, made pretense seem pointless. Because I'm running out of places to run to. He glanced at her, that steady gaze taking in more than she'd meant to reveal. And you, Mr. McKenna, why advertise for a stranger? running out of reasons to talk to myself, despite everything. Martha felt her mouth twitch toward a smile. It felt foreign on her face. The final hour brought them through a pass that opened onto a valley cupped between peaks like God's own hands. A stream ran silver through the bottom, and she could see a cabin, barn, and what might have been a garden plot gone wild. It wasn't the desolation she'd feared, it was possibility waiting for steady hands. "It needs work," Thomas said, something defensive creeping into his tone. "Everything worth having does." He stopped the wagon in front of the cabin, came around to help her down. This time she didn't hesitate to take his hand. "I'll show you the house. You can decide after. Decide whether you're staying." The cabin proved solid despite its weathered face. The main room held necessities: stove, table, chairs that didn't match but looked sturdy. A stone fireplace dominated one wall. Through doorways, she glimpsed 2 bedrooms, one clearly unused. When Thomas showed her the kitchen, she ran her fingers over the worn but clean surfaces. The dishes neatly stacked, everything in its place but somehow lonely. "This was my mother's domain," he said quietly. "Been 5 years now." Martha opened a cupboard, found it well stocked but dusty. Another held preserves. The dates faded. She could feel the weight of abandoned routines. "Mr. McKenna, what exactly are you offering?" He pulled a folded paper from his vest pocket, set it on the table. She recognized legal writing, precise terms. 3 months trial period. Wages, actual wages listed clearly. Room and board. After 3 months. Renegotiation of terms if both parties agreed. "You're offering me employment, not marriage." "Marriage is permanent. Seems wise to see if we suit first." Martha picked up the paper, reading carefully. It was more than fair, it was respectful. Protective, even. She could leave after 3 months with money earned, reference provided. "And if we suit, then we discuss different terms." She set down the paper, walked to the window. The valley spread golden in afternoon light. She could see the garden plot better now, neglected but not dead. Waiting. "I need to show you something else," Thomas said. He led her to the 2nd bedroom. Unlike the rest of the house, this room was pristine, preserved like a shrine. A woman's room, quilts on the bed. Silver brush set on the dresser, dresses still hanging in the wardrobe. Martha understood immediately. "Your wife, my fiancée, Sarah. She came out from Denver 3 summers ago, took one look at this place, and left on the next stage." Martha touched the wedding dress hanging in plain view. White silk yellowed with time. "You kept everything." "Couldn't bring myself to pack it away." "Foolish." "Hopeful," Martha corrected. "There's a difference." She turned to find him watching her with that steady gaze, something raw flickering beneath. "Miss Hartley, I should tell you other women have answered my advertisements. 5 in total. None stayed past seeing this room. Because they thought you still loved her. Because they knew I didn't. Keeping it like this? It's not about love. It's about failure." Martha understood that too well. She moved past him, back to the main room, needing distance from that preserved pain. On the kitchen table, she noticed something she'd missed before: a stack of letters tied with string. The top one was addressed to Thomas in feminine handwriting. "More applicants?" she asked. His face darkened. No, she shouldn't have touched them. But something made her reach out. Thomas moved faster than she expected for such a large man, his hand covering hers, pressing down on the letters. "Don't. Mr. McKenna. Please." The desperation in that single word stopped her. She withdrew her hand, but not before seeing what the pressure had revealed: dark stains seeping through the bottom envelope. Stains that looked disturbingly like dried blood. "Before we continue, please leave a like and subscribe. Let me know which city you're watching from. Now, let's get back to the story." Thomas's hand stayed pressed over hers, the letters trapped beneath. His palm radiated heat through her glove. Martha counted her heartbeats: 3, 4, 5, before he released her. Old business. His voice scraped like boots on gravel. Nothing to do with you. The dark stains had soaked through 3 envelopes at least. Martha stepped back, her bustle catching the chair. Thomas gathered the letters, shoving them into a drawer that stuck halfway. He forced it closed with his hip. You wanted to know the terms. Not a question. He pulled out a different paper, clean and unmarked. Sit. Martha sat. The chair creaked under her weight, not much, but enough to remind her she existed in this space. Thomas remained standing, his shadow falling across the table. 3 months. You cook, clean, help with preserving, garden if you're inclined. He pushed the paper toward her. $40 monthly, paid weekly, Sundays free. More than a governess maid, more than she'd expected. Martha read each line, her finger tracking the words. Board, room, use of household goods, the right to terminate with 1 week's notice from either party. After 3 months, we reassess. Meaning, his jaw worked like he was chewing words, deciding which ones to spit out. If we suit, we discuss permanent arrangements. Marriage. Eventually. Maybe. Martha set down the paper. Through the window, shadows stretched long across the valley. The temperature had dropped 10 degrees since they'd arrived. Her traveling dress, damp with sweat from the journey, clung cold against her ribs. The room, Sarah's room. Stays closed. Your room's across from mine. He moved to the doorway, waited. I'll show you. The room was small, clean. Iron bedstead, washstand, trunk at the foot, a rag rug, edges fraying but colors still bright. Martha tested the mattress corn husks, recently refreshed from the sound. The window faced east, morning sun. Then, pumps in the kitchen, outhouse behind the barn. I rise at 5. I'll have coffee ready at 4:30. His eyebrows lifted slightly. That's not required. I don't sleep past 4 anyway. He studied her, that careful assessment again. Martha felt exposed, like he could see the nights she'd sat up with other women's children. The morning she'd risen before households to avoid awkward breakfast encounters with husbands who looked too long. Supper's at 6. I don't talk much. Neither do I. Good. He turned to leave, stopped in the doorway. Miss Hartley, those letters, they're not my business. They're my brother's. Your brother? Dead now. 2 months. The blood. Martha's throat tightened. Thomas's knuckles whitened where he gripped the doorframe. How? That's tomorrow's conversation. You need rest. He left. Martha heard his boots, steady and deliberate, crossing to his room. His door closed with a soft click. She stood in the gathering dark, pulse hammering. Through the thin wall, she heard drawers opening, closing, then nothing. Martha unpinned her hair, fingers shaking slightly. As she pulled her nightgown from the carpet bag, something fell out. Another envelope, one she hadn't packed. Her name in unfamiliar handwriting. Inside, a single line. Ask him about the woman who came before you. The paper smelled of lavender and something else, something that made her stomach turn sulfur. Martha woke to darkness and the sound of boots on wood. 4:15 by the small clock on her washstand. She'd slept 3 hours at most, the anonymous note tucked under her pillow, its sulfur smell seeping into her dreams. Ask him about the woman who came before you. She dressed by touch corset, chemise, her oldest work dress. Her fingers knew every hook and button. Through the wall, she heard Thomas moving, the scrape of a drawer, water poured into a basin. The kitchen stood cold and dark. Martha felt along the wall to the stove, found matches in the tin box exactly where they should be. The kindling caught on the second strike. She fed it larger pieces, watching the flames build. Coffee pot on the back burner, water from the bucket by the door. 3 scoops of grounds. She'd noticed the tin yesterday, noted how much remained, calculated backward to his usual strength. Light crept gray through the windows. She found bacon in the cold box, eggs in a bowl covered with cheesecloth. The skillet hung on its designated hook. Everything in Thomas McKenna's kitchen had a place, had been given a place by someone who needed order to hold back chaos. The coffee bubbled. She pulled it forward. Let it settle. Found cups too, though only one showed regular use. Set them on the table. The bacon sizzled, filling the room with smoke and salt. She cracked eggs one-handed, a skill learned in the Whitmore kitchen while the cook gossiped and forgot to watch. "You're up." Thomas filled the doorway, suspenders hanging, shirt half-tucked. His hair stood at angles that might have been amusing on another man. On him, it made him look younger, unguarded. "Said I would be." He moved to the wash basin, splashed water on his face. Martha set a plate in front of his chair, 3 eggs, 4 strips of bacon, bread she'd found wrapped in a clean cloth. He sat, picked up the fork, paused. "This is, you didn't need to. Eat while it's hot." She turned back to the stove, made her own plate with what remained. 1 egg, 2 bacon strips. When she sat, Thomas was staring at her portions. "That's not enough. It's what I eat." "There's plenty, Mr. McKenna." She met his gaze. "I eat what I need. This is what I need." His jaw worked, but he returned to his own plate. They ate without speaking, the only sounds their forks against china, the fire settling in the stove. Martha noticed he used his left hand to eat, his right curled slightly on the table. When he reached for his coffee, she saw why a deep scar ran across his palm, the kind that never fully healed right. "What needs doing today?" she asked. He set down his cup. "I'll handle the livestock. Wood needs splitting, fence repairs on the north pasture. The house? Whatever you think." He stood, grabbed his hat from the peg. "Root cellars behind the barn. Might be preserves down there. Supplies. The garden plot, may I?" Something shifted in his expression. Sarah hated the garden. "I'm not Sarah." "No." He studied her. "No, you're not." The door closed behind him. Martha cleared the dishes, heated water for washing. Through the window, she watched Thomas cross to the barn, his stride long and purposeful. He moved like a man who knew exactly where he was going, even if he didn't know why. She found the root cellar by following a worn path. The wooden doors were heavy, reinforced with iron straps. Inside, shelves lined stone walls, jars of preserves, most dated 1879 or earlier, sacks of flour gone weevily. But in the back corner, a wooden crate caught her eye. Seeds packets, dozens of them, wrapped in oilcloth. D.M. Ferry & Co., Detroit. The dates ranged from 1876 to 1879. Someone had collected them carefully: squash, beans, corn, tomatoes. On each packet, penciled notes in a woman's hand. Planted May 10th, good yield. Needs more water than expected. Save seeds from largest, Thomas's mother. Then, a gardener who documented everything. Martha carried the crate into sunlight. The plot stretched behind the house, maybe 1/4 of an acre. Fence posts still standing, but rails mostly down. She walked the perimeter, noting where water naturally collected, where morning sun hit first. The soil, when she dug her fingers in, was dark and rich beneath the top layer of neglect. She found tools in the barn hoe, rake, shovel, all showing care despite disuse. Thomas was in the far pasture, his shirt a blue dot against brown grass. Martha tied her skirts up, exposing her boot tops and stockings. No one to see, no one to judge. The work felt good, mindless and necessary. Pull weeds, their roots coming up with satisfying tears. Turn soil, revealing its hidden life. Her shoulders burned. Sweat ran down her spine, soaking her chemise. She'd forgotten what her body could do when asked. "Expecting to plant today?" Martha turned. A man sat on a bay horse just beyond the fence, watching her, older than Thomas. Softer, with the kind of smile that never reached the eyes. His clothes said money good wool, silver conchos on his hatband. Planning for spring. Optimistic. He swung down from the saddle, approached the fence. Harlan Briggs, I own the Double B. Next property over. He extended his hand over the fence. Martha looked at it, then at her own soil-caked fingers. I'm a bit dirty for handshakes. Mr. Briggs. Thomas finally got himself some help. I see. The way he said it like she was livestock purchased at auction. Martha straightened, met his gaze directly. I'm Miss Hartley, Mr. McKenna's business associate. Briggs laughed, a sound like creek rocks grinding. Business associate, that's what they're calling it now. That's what I'm calling it. Miss Hartley, is it how long you planning to last? The others didn't make it a week. Others? 4 or 5 at least, maybe 6. Hard to keep count. He leaned against the fence post, his weight making it creak. Course, none of them had your... His eyes traveled down. Back up determination. Martha's hands clenched in the dirt. Mr. Briggs, did you have business with Mr. McKenna? Always do. Water rights need discussing. Creek's running low this year. Then you'll want to speak with him. I'm speaking with you just fine. Thomas appeared around the barn corner, carrying split wood. He saw Briggs, set the wood down deliberate and slow. As he approached, Martha noticed his right hand hovering near his hip, where a man might wear a gun if he wore one. Briggs. McKenna, just meeting your new business associate. Thomas stepped through the gap where the gate should be, positioned himself slightly forward of Martha, not blocking her, but clearly marking territory. Water's been measured and recorded, same as every year. Measurements can be wrong. Not mine. Briggs smiled wider. We'll see. County surveyor might have different opinions. He touched his hat brim to Martha. Miss Hartley, welcome to Devil's Ridge. Hope you last longer than the others. He mounted his horse, turned it sharply, making it dance. As he rode off, Martha saw him pull something from his pocket, drop it near the road. It fluttered white in the grass. Thomas watched until horse and rider disappeared over the rise. His shoulders dropped slightly. How many others? Martha asked. What? Women. Before me? How many? Thomas's face went still. Does it matter? Briggs said 4 or 5. Maybe 6. Briggs says a lot of things. That's not an answer. Thomas turned toward the house. Martha followed, her boots slipping on loose soil. He stopped at the woodpile, began stacking what he'd dropped. Mr. McKenna? The note. He froze. What note? The one in my bag last night. About the woman before me. Wood clattered from his arms. One piece rolled to her feet. When Thomas faced her, his eyes had gone dark as the deep woods. Show me. 2 weeks. 14 mornings of coffee at 4:30. 14 evenings of silence that had shifted from brittle to something almost comfortable. The note Martha had shown him that first morning still lay in Thomas's dresser drawer. He'd taken it, studied it, said nothing more. She'd learned not to ask. Martha's hands moved without thought now. 3 scoops of coffee, bacon from the cold box. Eggs cracked one-handed while the skillet heated. Through the window, pink light touched the mountain peaks. Thomas would emerge in 6 minutes, sometimes 7 if he'd been reading late. The books had surprised her. She'd found them her 4th night, unable to sleep, creeping through the house like a thief. One shelf. Tucked behind his chair, cattle breeding manuals. Yes, but also Whitman. Emerson, a worn copy of Thoreau with margin notes in pencil. She'd touched the spine of Leaves of Grass, felt the pages soft from handling. You can borrow them. She'd spun, found him in the doorway, barefoot, suspenders hanging. I didn't mean to. Can't sleep either. He'd pulled out the Whitman, handed it to her. Mother's favorite. Now the books migrated between their rooms, unspoken trade. She left the row on the kitchen table, found Emerson in its place. Small exchanges that required no words. The door opened. Thomas filled the frame, hair damp from washing. He moved to his chair, sat. Martha set his plate down. She'd learned he liked his eggs over easy. Bacon crisp but not burned. He ate with focus, left hand working steady. The scar on his right palm had started to make sense when she'd watched him split wood, favoring that hand, adjusting his grip. "Chicken coop today," he said between bites. "The hole in the back corner." He looked up. "You've been inside, collecting eggs. Something's been stealing them. Weasel, maybe, or rat." He pushed back from the table. "I'll get the lumber. I'll get the tools." They met at the coop. Martha had brought the hammer, nails, tin snips. Thomas carried planks salvaged from somewhere, edges weathered but wood still sound. He measured the hole with his hands, marked the cut with a pencil stub. "Hold this." Martha braced the plank while he sawed. Sawdust fell on her boots, sweet-smelling pine. When he finished the cut, she was already positioning the board. They'd learned this rhythm, her anticipating, him accepting her competence without question. She held the board. He hammered. 3 strikes per nail. Efficient? His shirt pulled tight across his shoulders with each swing. Martha watched the muscles work, the careful control. A nail bent. He pulled it out, tossed it aside, started fresh. No cursing, no frustration, just solving the problem. "Your turn." He handed her the hammer. Martha had learned young her father teaching her before he died, before her mother's decline, before she'd become something between servant and family to 3 different households. She positioned a nail, struck clean. It went in straight. "You've done this before." "My father built coffins." The words came out before she could stop them. "During the cholera outbreak. I helped when I was young." Thomas said nothing, but he shifted slightly, his shoulder almost touching hers. Almost. They worked this way. Her hammering. Him holding. The sun climbed higher. Sweat gathered at the base of her neck, under the weight of her pinned hair. Water. He passed her the canteen. She drank, tasted mint again. She'd learned he chewed wild mint leaves, had found his patch by the stream. When she handed it back, their fingers touched. Both froze. The contact lasted 1 heartbeat, 2. Thomas pulled away first, busying himself with measuring the next board. Inside the coop, Martha gathered eggs while Thomas reinforced the roost. 6 eggs today, still warm. The hens muttered and fussed, but they'd grown used to her. She knew which one pecked, which one allowed a gentle hand. "My mother loved these birds." Martha turned. Thomas stood by the nesting boxes, running his hand along the worn wood. "Brought them as chicks from Denver. Named everyone." His mouth twitched. "Ethel, Mabel, Constance. Proper lady names for improper birds." "Which one's Ethel?" "The red with the twisted toe." He pointed to the bird pecking near Martha's foot. "Meanest of the bunch." "She's protective. There's a difference." Thomas made a sound that might have been a laugh. Cut short. He ducked back outside. Martha followed, eggs cradled in her apron. They spent the afternoon on the fence, her holding posts while he reset them, then switching when his hand cramped. Neither mentioned the cramp, just traded places smooth as dancers who'd learned each other's limits. "Briggs'll be back," Thomas said, driving in a post with a sledgehammer. "About the water. About everything. Man wants what he wants." "What does he want?" Thomas paused mid-swing. "This land. The water rights. Maybe more." The way he said more made Martha's skin prickle. She thought of Briggs's eyes, how they'd traveled over her like she was goods for sale. "Has he always been a problem?" "Since my father died. 8 years now." Thomas wiped sweat from his forehead, leaving a dirt streak. Thought my brother would help, but Samuel had his own troubles. The brother with the bloody letters. Martha wanted to ask, but had learned Thomas revealed things in his own time, like a tap that dripped slow but steady if you didn't force it. The sun dropped low. They walked back to the house, tools over shoulders, comfortable distance between them. Martha noticed they'd fallen into step, her 2 strides to his 1, a rhythm that felt practiced though it couldn't be. Inside, she started supper while Thomas washed. Salt pork and beans she'd soaked overnight, cornbread from morning's leftover batter, simple food that filled the stomach and asked no questions. They ate as darkness fell. Thomas lit the kerosene lamp, adjusted the wick until the light spread golden across the table. Martha had noticed he was particular about the light not too bright, not too dim. Everything measured and controlled. "I need to go to town tomorrow," he said finally. "Supplies. I'll make a list. You could come." Martha's hand stilled on her coffee cup. In 2 weeks. He'd never suggested she accompany him anywhere. "If you want," he added, not looking at her. "Yes." He nodded, pushed back from the table. At his bedroom door, he paused. "Martha." First time he'd used her given name. It sounded different in his mouth, careful, like he was testing its weight. The women before, there were 3, not 6. His knuckles whitened on the doorframe. 1 left after a day, 1 after a week. The last. He stopped. Martha waited. The last one left different. Different how? But he'd already closed his door. Martha sat in the lamplight, beans going cold on her plate. Through the window, something moved in the darkness beyond the barn. Could have been deer, could have been shadow, could have been someone watching. She stood to get a better look and saw a white envelope tucked under the door, one corner visible against the dark wood, fresh. It hadn't been there when they'd entered. Someone had been on the porch while they ate dinner, close enough to touch the house, close enough to hear every word. The envelope lay untouched where Martha had found it. She'd left it there through the night, through morning coffee, through Thomas loading the wagon for town. Now, as wheels crunched down the mountain road, it burned white against the dark floorboards. Martha gripped the wagon bench. The road curved sharp around a granite outcrop, one wheel riding the edge. Thomas's hands stayed steady on the reins, but she caught him glancing at her, quick checks between navigating ruts. "You're quiet," he said. "So are you." "I'm always quiet. Not like this." The horses picked their way down a steep grade. Martha's stomach lurched with each drop and sway. Thomas's shoulder brushed hers as the wagon tilted. Solid, warm through his cotton shirt. "There was another note," she said. The reins went taut in his hands. The horses snorted, confused by the mixed signal. "When?" "Last night. Under the door." "Did you?" "No." They descended through pine shadow. Needles thick on the road, muffling the wheels. The air tasted of resin and something else smoke, distant but wrong for the season. "Could be Briggs," Thomas said finally. "Could be. But you don't think so." Martha watched his profile, the set of his jaw, the muscle jumping near his ear. The handwriting was the same as the first note. "You sure?" "I worked for a lawyer once. Mr. Carver, he taught me to notice handwriting. Said it was like faces, everyone's different if you know what to look for." Thomas turned the horses onto the main road, wider here, safer. His shoulders dropped slightly. "What did Carver teach you about documents, contracts, wills?" She paused. "Forgeries. That why you left?" "No. His wife didn't like how much he taught me." Thomas made that sound again, the one that might be a laugh if he let it. Threatened by competence. Most are. They rode in silence through grassland gone gold with autumn. Martha watched a hawk circle, riding thermals she couldn't feel. The town appeared gradual, first a fence, then a barn, then buildings clustered like teeth in an old skull. Devil's Ridge proper consisted of one main street, wooden sidewalks, and dust. Thomas pulled up at the general store, came around to help her down. His hands at her waist lasted exactly as long as necessary, no longer. "I'll be at the feed store," he said. "Hour, maybe 2. The list, tell Murphy to put it on my account." He walked away, that long stride eating ground. Martha watched him go, then turned to find 3 women watching her from the milliner's shop across the street. They didn't look away when she met their eyes. Murphy's store smelled of pickle brine and leather and penny candy. Martha moved through the aisles, filling her basket flour, salt, coffee, thread. The prices marked clear, no haggling needed. She could feel eyes on her, the weight of curiosity and judgment. "You're McKenna's new girl." Martha turned. A woman stood behind her, thin as wire, dressed in black bombazine that had seen better decades. "I'm Miss Hartley." "That's what you are now. Question is, for how long?" "I don't believe we've been introduced." "Mrs. Holcomb. I run the boarding house." She stepped closer. Martha smelled lavender water and something sour underneath. The last girl stayed there. Before. Before what? Before she went up the mountain and came back wrong. Martha's hand tightened on the basket handle. "Wrong how? Didn't speak, wouldn't eat, left on the next stage east, and good riddance." "There's something not right up there. Mr. McKenna has been nothing but proper." "Oh, it's not him." Mrs. Holcomb leaned in, voice dropping. "It's what happened to his brother. What he did. Thomas covered it up, but we all know." "Know what?" But Mrs. Holcomb had already turned away, bustling toward the fabric section. Martha paid for her goods, declined Murphy's offer to carry them to the wagon. Outside, the sun felt too bright, the street too exposed. She found Thomas at the feed store, loading sacks of grain. His shirt stuck to his back with sweat, showing the muscles working underneath. He saw her, straightened. "You're early." "I'm done." Something in her voice made him look closer. He dusted his hands on his pants, came over. "What happened?" "Nothing. Talk. That's all." "About what?" "Your brother." Thomas went still. Not frozen, but deliberately motionless, like an animal deciding whether to fight or run. "Get in the wagon." They left town faster than they'd come, Thomas pushing the horses harder than necessary. Martha held the supplies steady as they bounced over ruts. Neither spoke until they'd climbed back into the mountain's shadow. "What did they say?" he asked finally. "That the last woman left wrong. That something happened with Samuel." Thomas pulled the horses to a stop, right there in the middle of the road. He wrapped the reins around the brake handle, turned to face her full on. "You want to know fine? Samuel killed himself. 2 months ago. Shot himself in my mother's room, in front of the last woman I hired." Martha's chest tightened. Why? Because he was being blackmailed. Because he'd done something in Denver he couldn't undo. Because he was weak. Thomas's voice stayed flat, controlled, but his knuckles were white where he gripped his knees. "Margaret, the woman she found him. Blood everywhere. On the walls, the quilt, her dress. She couldn't stop screaming. The letters, the bloody letters. From whoever had their hooks in him. I burned them after. Didn't read them. Didn't want to know." Martha reached out, stopped just short of touching his hand. "I'm sorry." "Don't be." He made his choice. They sat in the settling dust, horses stamping and blowing. A crow called from the pines, harsh and mocking. "Is that why you advertised for help?" "I advertised because I was tired of talking to ghosts." He unwrapped the reins, clicked to the horses. "Because the house felt like a tomb." They climbed toward home. Martha watched the familiar landmarks pass the lightning-struck pine, the rock shaped like a bear's head, the stream crossing where they always stopped to let the horses drink. This time Thomas didn't stop. When they pulled up to the house, the sun sat low on the mountain's shoulder. Thomas unloaded the wagon while Martha carried in supplies. She found the envelope still on the floor, picked it up. The same lavender scent, the same sulfur undertone. She opened it. He's lying. Checked the third drawer of his dresser, under the papers. Martha set the note on the table, went to start supper. Thomas came in with the last sack of grain. Saw the paper. You read it? Yes. He picked it up, studied it. Third drawer. Your dresser, apparently. You want to look mo. Do you want me to? He walked to his room. She heard the drawer open, papers rustling. He came back carrying a bundle tied with string, set it on the table between them. Go ahead. Martha untied the string. Letters spilled out 5, 6, 7, all addressed to Thomas in different feminine hands, all opened. She picked one up at random. Mr. McKenna, I cannot possibly live in such isolation. The very thought terrifies me. Please understand, I must decline your offer. Miss Catherine Wells. Another, sir. Your requirements are too demanding for a woman of gentle breeding. I am not a farmhand. Mrs. Davies. And another, Mr. McKenna. While your terms are generous, I fear a man who lives alone so long must have habits no decent woman could tolerate. Miss Price. Martha read them all, each rejection precise and cutting. Thomas stood by the window, back to her, shoulders rigid. Not quite the story Briggs tells, she said. No, they rejected you. Not the other way around. Yes. Martha retied the bundle, pushed it aside. You kept them. Why? Reminder of what I am, what people see. What do they see? He turned. The dying light caught his face, showing every line, every weather-beaten angle. A man too rough, too silent, too much of this place. He gestured at the window, the mountains beyond. Sarah said, I had all the warmth of winter. Said living with me would be like being buried in snow. The words hung between them. Martha stood, moved to the stove, started laying the fire for supper. Her hands shook slightly. The last man I worked for, she said to the kindling. Mr. Hammond, the one who said I was too old. He also said I had the appeal of winter itself, barren and cold. She struck a match, watched it catch. Been carrying those words for 2 years now. She heard Thomas move, his boots on the floor. He stopped just behind her, close enough she could feel the heat from his body. He was wrong. So was Sarah. They stood that way, her facing the stove, him behind her, the space between them charged with something unnamed. Then the fire crackled, breaking the moment, and Thomas stepped back. I'll wash up, he said. Martha nodded, started pulling out ingredients for supper. Through the window. Full dark had fallen. As she reached for the salt pork, she noticed something else. The white envelope that had been under the door, she'd left it on the floor by the entrance. It was gone. Martha's fingers found the empty floor where the envelope should have been. Smooth wood, a few dust motes, nothing else. She ran her hand wider, feeling for paper that might have shifted, looking for something. Thomas stood in his doorway, shirt fresh, hair damp from washing. The envelope, the one that was under the door last night. His eyes moved to the spot. You left it there. I wanted you to see it. Where you found it. Thomas crossed the room in 3 strides, crouched where she knelt. His knee touched hers through her skirts. She didn't move away. Wind could have moved it. Door's been closed all day. They both looked at the door. Solid oak with iron hinges. No gap underneath wide enough for paper to slip through. Martha's neck prickled. Someone was in the house, she said. Thomas stood, pulled her up with him. His hand stayed on her elbow. While we were in town, Or before we left. He moved to the window, studied the darkening yard. Martha noticed he kept his body angled, not full to the glass. Old habit or new caution, she couldn't tell. "Lock your door tonight," he said. "I don't have a lock." Then pushed the dresser against it. Thomas. First time she'd used his given name. It stopped them both. His hand tightened on the window frame. "Just do it, Martha." The next morning brought Briggs. Martha heard the horses before she saw them, multiple hooves on hard-packed earth. She looked up from kneading bread dough, flour to her elbows. Through the window, 3 men on horseback, Briggs in front. 2 others she didn't recognize carrying surveying equipment. Thomas emerged from the barn, pitchfork still in hand. He set it against the wall, deliberate, visible, walked toward the riders with that measured stride. Martha wiped her hands on her apron, stepped onto the porch. The morning air bit sharp. October now, though barely. Frost soon. "McKenna." Briggs stayed mounted, making Thomas look up. "Brought the county surveyors." "No survey scheduled?" "Is now." Briggs pulled papers from his coat. "Official order? Seems there's some question about your water rights." "No question. Creek's been McKenna water for 30 years. Papers say different." The 2 surveyors dismounted, began unloading equipment. One was young, nervous, kept glancing between Briggs and Thomas. The other, older, moved with practiced efficiency. "What papers?" Thomas asked. "Found in the county office. Shows the creek boundary different than you claim." Briggs smiled. "Puts your access on my land." Martha stepped forward. "May I see these papers?" All 4 men turned. Briggs's smile widened. "This is men's business, miss. This is legal business." She came down the steps, stood beside Thomas. "I have experience with documents. Do you now?" She held out her hand, waited. Briggs's smile faltered slightly. He handed down the papers. Martha studied them. Good quality paper, but too white. The ink too black. Not faded like it should be after 30 years. And the seal, she ran her thumb over it. Smooth. Real seals from that era were always slightly raised. "These are recent," she said. "They're official. They're forged." The younger surveyor dropped his chain. It clattered on the stones. Briggs's face darkened. "That's a serious accusation." "Yes, it is." Martha handed the papers to Thomas. "The ink's wrong, paper's wrong, and whoever made that seal used modern equipment." "You can't know that." "I can. I do." She met Briggs's stare. "Mr. Carver in St. Louis taught me well, before his wife objected." Thomas folded the papers, put them in his pocket. "Get off my land, Briggs." "Not until we survey." "Then survey the real documents." Briggs leaned forward in his saddle. "What real documents?" "The ones my grandfather filed. 1852. Samuel McKenna, licensed surveyor." "Never seen any such papers." "Then you haven't looked." Thomas's voice stayed level, but Martha saw his hands curl slightly. "County office has copies. Checked yesterday. Nothing there?" The older surveyor cleared his throat. "Mr. Briggs, if there's question about the documents..." "There's no question. Set up your equipment." Thomas stepped forward. "No. You refusing an official survey. I'm refusing a false one." They stood frozen, Briggs on his horse. Thomas planted solid, the surveyors uncertain between them. Martha could hear her own heartbeat, loud as thunder. "We'll be back," Briggs said finally. "With the sheriff?" "Bring him. Bring the judge, too. Bring the whole town." Thomas pulled the forged papers from his pocket, tore them in half. "And bring real documents next time." Briggs yanked his horse around hard enough to make it squeal. The surveyors scrambled to pack their equipment, mounted quick. They rode off in a dust cloud that hung in the still air. Thomas stood watching until they disappeared over the rise. His shoulders stayed rigid. "They'll be back," Martha said. "Tonight. We need those papers. Your grandfather's surveys. Have to be here somewhere. Mother kept everything." They searched through lunch, through the afternoon, every drawer, every shelf. Martha took the main room while Thomas went through his mother's room, first time she'd seen him enter it since that first day. She heard him moving things, careful but thorough. The sun dropped low. Martha lit lamps, kept searching. In a trunk beneath old quilts, she found photograph albums, letters, but no surveys. Thomas came out of his mother's room, dust in his hair, defeat in his shoulders. Nothing. The barn. Already looked. Martha sat back on her heels, thinking. Where would your mother put something precious? Something she'd want protected. Her room. But I've been through everything. Under everything. Thomas frowned. The floorboards are solid. What about the attic? There's no... He stopped. The root cellar. They grabbed lamps, hurried outside. The cellar doors were heavy. Thomas hauled them open. The wooden steps creaked under their weight. Martha went first, lamp held high. The circle of light pushed back shadows, showing shelves of preserves, sacks of feed. Back corner, Thomas said. They moved between shelves, Martha's skirts catching on rough wood. In the corner, barely visible, a wooden crate she hadn't noticed before. Different from the others, older, better made. Thomas pulled it out, set it on the floor. The lid was nailed shut. He worked his knife under the edge, pried up one nail, then another. The wood groaned, split slightly. Inside, wrapped in oilcloth, a leather portfolio. Thomas lifted it out, hands careful as if it might crumble. Inside, surveys, original ones. Samuel McKenna's signature bold across the bottom. Official seals, properly raised. Every water boundary marked clear. These prove everything, Martha said. If the judge believes them over Briggs's money, he will. Look, she pointed to a notation. Witnessed by Judge Patterson's father, signed and dated. Thomas studied the papers in the lamplight. You understand these things, the legal parts? Some. Enough to argue in court. I'm a woman. They won't let me argue. But you could tell me what to say. Martha nodded. Above them, footsteps crossed the floor of the house. Slow, deliberate. Someone walking through their kitchen. Thomas grabbed Martha's arm, pulled her back against the wall. The footsteps continued moving toward the bedrooms now. A drawer opened, closed. Another. Stay here, Thomas whispered. No. He looked at her, lamplight catching his eyes. Something passed between them, agreement, understanding. He handed her his knife, took the lamp. They climbed the steps together, Thomas leading, Martha close behind. The kitchen door stood open. They'd closed it when they left. Through the doorway, a figure moved in Thomas's room, back to them, searching through his dresser. Slight build, dark clothes. The figure turned, lamplight catching a face Martha recognized. Margaret, the woman who'd found Samuel, the one who'd left wrong. She stood there holding Thomas's letters, the ones from women who'd rejected him. Her dress was the same she'd worn when she left, but stained now. Dark stains that could have been mud or old blood. Hello, Thomas, she said. I came back. Margaret stood in Thomas's bedroom doorway, the rejection letters crumpled in her fist. Lavender water couldn't mask the smell coming off her sweat. Road dust, and something else. Something wrong. The same sulfur scent from the anonymous notes. Margaret. Thomas's voice came out steady, but Martha felt his arm tense where it pressed against hers. Thought you went back east. I did. Margaret stepped into the kitchen, lamplight showing her face clearer. Hollow cheeks, eyes sunk deep. But some things follow you. She moved to the table, sat in Martha's chair. The letters scattered across the wood. Thomas stayed by the door, blocking Martha slightly with his body. You've been leaving the notes, Martha said. Margaret's laugh scraped like a rusty gate. Clever, like he said you'd be. Who said he? Briggs. Margaret picked up one of the letters, smoothed it flat. Paid me to come back, 'cause trouble. Make you leave. Thomas stepped forward. How much? $50. Margaret's fingers traced the words on the letter, too demanding for a woman of gentle breeding. More than you ever offered. I offered you fair wages. Before or after your brother painted your mother's room with his brains. The lamp flame wavered in Thomas's hand. Martha took it from him, set it on the counter. You need to leave, Thomas said. Can't. Briggs wants results. Margaret stood, moved to the window. Told everyone in town about her. Martha Hartley, the governess who got too friendly with her employers. Martha's chest tightened. That's not true, doesn't matter. Mrs. Holcomb's already spreading it. How you worked for 3 families, left each one quick, always the wives who sent you packing. Margaret turned, smiled. Wonder why you know nothing about me. I know you're 38, no husband, no prospects, taking any work you can get. Margaret's eyes glittered. Just like I was. Thomas moved then, putting himself fully between the two women. Get out! She should know what she's in for. Margaret sidestepped, addressing Martha directly. You think you're different, special. You're just the next one. When Briggs gets this land, and he will, Thomas will put another advertisement in the paper. Find another desperate woman to cook and clean and... Stop! Thomas's voice dropped low. Dangerous. What? Tell her how you never touch them. Keep your distance like they're diseased. Margaret laughed again. 2 months I was here. Not once did you look at me like a woman. You were an employee. I was invisible. She grabbed the letters from the table. Just like all of these women would have been. Just like she is. Martha felt each word like a physical blow. Margaret saw it, smiled wider. There it is. The doubt. You feel it, don't you? How he looks through you, not at you. You're wrong. But Martha's voice came out thin. Am I? When's the last time he used your name, touched your hand without pulling away like you'd burned him? Margaret stepped closer. You're not building something here. You're filling a position. Housekeeper. Cook. Someone to talk at when the silence gets too heavy. Thomas grabbed Margaret's arm. Enough. She jerked free. Truth hurts. Doesn't it? She looked at Martha. Pack now. Leave with dignity. Or stay and learn what I learned, that you're nothing here but furniture that breathes. She walked to the door, paused. Briggs will be back tomorrow with the sheriff. Official eviction notice. Something about water rights and forged documents. She smiled over her shoulder. Your documents, Thomas. The ones you've been hiding. The door closed behind her. Martha and Thomas stood in the lamplight, the space between them suddenly vast. She's lying, Thomas said. About which part? He turned to her, and Martha saw something raw in his face. All of it. Even the part about looking through me. His mouth opened, closed. No words came. Martha walked to her room, shut the door. Through the wall, she heard Thomas moving, pacing, stopping, pacing again. She pulled out her carpet bag, the same one she'd arrived with. Her hands moved without thought, folding her spare dress, wrapping her mother's cameo in cloth. A knock on her door. Martha. She didn't answer. Please. She kept packing. Her father's Bible, the borrowed books, no, those were his. She set them aside. The door opened. Thomas filled the frame, lamplight behind him making him a silhouette. You're leaving. It's best. For who? Martha faced him. For you. Briggs won't push so hard if I'm gone. And Margaret's right, you can find someone else. Someone who... Stop. He stepped into the room. Just stop. Thomas. No. He was close now, close enough she could see the muscle jumping in his jaw. You want to know the truth? Fine. I don't look through you. I look away because if I look too long, I forget why I'm keeping distance. Martha's hands stilled on the carpet bag. Those other women, Margaret's right about them. They were positions to fill. But you... He stopped. Struggled. I watch you work the garden, and I think about things I shouldn't. Your hands in the soil, the way you hum when you're content, how you know when I need coffee before I know myself. It's not just anything. His voice roughened. I come in from the barn and listen for you in the house. Your footsteps, your breathing. When you borrowed my books, I traced where your fingers touched the pages. Martha couldn't breathe properly. The room felt too small. 2 nights ago, when you reached for the salt at supper, your sleeve pulled back. There's a scar on your wrist. Thin, white. I wanted to ask how you got it. I wanted to touch it. His hands clenched at his sides. I wanted to touch you. Then why don't you? Because look what happened to the last woman who got close. Samuel destroyed her. And I'm his brother. Same blood. Same potential for ruin. Martha moved then. Crossed the space between them. Put her hand on his chest. Felt his heart hammering. You're not him. You don't know that. I do. She pressed harder, felt him shake under her palm. A ruined man doesn't read poetry, doesn't name chickens, doesn't keep rejection letters to remind himself to be better. Thomas covered her hand with his scarred palm rough against her skin. If you stay, Briggs will make it ugly. The whole town will talk. They're already talking. It'll get worse. I've survived worse. They stood that way, her hand on his chest, his covering hers. The lamp flickered, throwing shadows. I'm not good with words, he said finally. But I'm good here, with you here. The house feels alive again. Thomas. Stay. Not as an employee, not as someone filling a position. Stay as... He stopped, searched for words. As Martha, just Martha. That's enough. More than enough. Martha felt the last of her resistance crumble. The 3 months aren't up. Forget the 3 months. Forget the contract. His thumb moved across her knuckles. Stay because you want to, or leave because you don't. But decide based on truth, not Margaret's poison. Outside, a horse whinnied, then another, multiple horses, moving fast toward the house. Thomas dropped her hand, moved to the window. Riders, 4, maybe 5. Martha could see torches through the glass. Hear men's voices, loud and aggressive. It's not morning yet, she said. Briggs doesn't wait for convenient times. The riders pulled up hard in the yard. Briggs's voice carried clear. McKenna, got something for you. Thomas grabbed his rifle from behind the door. Stay inside. No. Martha, we face this together or not at all. He looked at her, something shifting in his expression. Together, then. They stepped onto the porch. Briggs sat his horse with 4 other men, all armed. But it was what they dragged behind them that made Martha's blood cold. The wooden marker from Samuel's grave, rope tied around it, dirt still clinging to its base, and beneath it, scattered in the yard, the contents of the grave itself. Samuel's coffin had been opened. The torchlight made everything wrong shadows where there shouldn't be. Samuel's coffin wood pale as old bone. Thomas's rifle stayed pointed at the ground, but Martha could see his finger curve near the trigger. That's desecration, Briggs. Thomas's voice carried flat across the yard. That's justice. Briggs swung down from his horse, boots hitting hard. Your brother owed debts, big ones. Denver people want their money. Samuel's dead. Debt doesn't die. Briggs pulled papers from his coat. Transfers to next of kin. That's you. The other riders spread out, hemming the porch. Martha recognized the younger surveyor from before. He wouldn't meet her eyes. How much? Thomas asked. $800. Martha's stomach dropped. A fortune. More than Thomas could raise selling everything. You don't have it, Briggs continued. Which means the land transfers to pay the debt. Lucky for you, I'm willing to buy fair price. Half what it's worth. More than you'll get at auction. Thomas lowered the rifle, set it against the porch rail. Show me the papers. Briggs approached, stayed just out of reach, tossed the documents on the steps. Thomas picked them up, held them to the torchlight. Martha read over his shoulder promissory notes. Samuel's signature. Denver First National Bank. These are real, she said quietly. Thomas nodded. His jaw worked. Got 3 days to pay, Briggs said. After that, sheriff takes the land. He looked at Martha. Course, there's other arrangements possible. What arrangements? Briggs smiled. The lady could earn some money, in town. Mrs. Holcomb runs a boarding house, but the back room's, well, different kind of board. Thomas moved so fast Martha barely saw it. His fist connected with Briggs's jaw, sent him sprawling. 2 riders drew guns. Martha grabbed Thomas's arm, held him back. That's assault. McKenna. Briggs spat blood, struggled to his feet. Sheriff will hear about this too. Get off my land. Not your land much longer. Briggs mounted his horse, looked down at them. 3 days. The debt or the deed. They rode off, leaving Samuel's remains scattered in the dirt. Thomas stood rigid, fists clenched. Martha waited until the hoofbeats faded. We need to bury him again. We need $800. Thomas, help me. They worked by lamplight, gathering what had been scattered. The coffin had split at the corners. Samuel's body, wrapped in canvas, remained intact. Small mercy. They carried him together. Martha at the feet, Thomas at the shoulders. Set him back in the earth. Thomas shoveled dirt. Martha held the lamp. Neither spoke until the grave was filled, the marker replanted. I have $40 saved, Martha said. I have 90, maybe 100 if I sell the horses. That's not enough. No. They stood at the grave's foot. Thomas's shadow fell long across the fresh-turned earth. You should leave, he said. Tomorrow, before this gets worse. We've had this conversation. That was before. Nothing's changed. Thomas turned to her. Dirt streaked his face, his hands. Everything's changed. In 3 days, I'll have nothing. No land, no house, no way to provide. Stop. Martha set down the lamp, took his dirty hands in hers. I have something to tell you. His hands stilled in hers. The lawyer I worked for, Carver. He taught me more than handwriting. She squeezed his fingers. There's ways to fight this. Legal ways. Martha. The Denver Bank. If Samuel took loans, there's records, real ones. We can verify the amount, check the signatures. In 3 days, if we ride hard, leave at dawn. Denver's 2 days from here. Then we don't sleep. Thomas pulled his hands free. You don't have to do this. Yes, I do. Why? Martha reached into her pocket, pulled out a folded paper, the contract he'd given her that first day. She tore it in half, then quarters. Let the pieces fall. Because 3 months is up tomorrow, and I choose to stay. Thomas went still. Martha, as your wife, if you'll have me. The words came out steady, though her heart hammered. We face Briggs married or not at all. That's not I won't have you marry me because of Briggs. I'm not. She stepped closer. I'm marrying you because when I wake at 4, I listen for your boots. Because when you read poetry, you move your lips with the words. Because you gave me wages and dignity when everyone else saw worthless goods. Thomas's breath came rough. You deserve better than a man about to lose everything. I deserve a man who sees me, not through me, not around me, but me. She touched his face, felt stubble and dried sweat. That's you. Martha. Her name broke in his mouth. I don't have a ring. Don't have anything to offer. Offer me truth. He caught her hand, pressed it harder against his cheek. Truth is, I've been yours since you told Briggs you were my business associate. Truth is, I'd rather lose the land than lose you. Then don't lose either. They stood in the lamplight, Samuel's grave at their feet, stars cold overhead. Thomas pulled her against him, first time he'd held her proper. She felt his heart beating through his shirt, fast as her own. Judge Peterson can marry us. Tomorrow, before we leave for Denver. Or tonight. Thomas pulled back, looked at her. Tonight. He lives 3 miles north. We could wake him. Martha Hartley. Something shifted in his face, almost a smile. Are you proposing we wake a judge at midnight to marry us? I'm proposing we stop wasting time. He kissed her then. Not gentle, not careful. Hungry, like he'd been starving and finally found bread. Martha kissed him back, tasted coffee and desperation and something like hope. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Thomas rested his forehead against hers. Get your coat. They saddled horses by lamplight. Martha had to ride astride, no time for propriety. Thomas helped her mount, his hands lingering at her waist. The ride to Judge Peterson's took an hour through darkness. Martha followed Thomas's shadow, trusting his knowledge of the trail. When they arrived, the house stood dark. Thomas pounded on the door, waited, pounded again. A light appeared in an upstairs window, the judge's voice, irritated. What in blazes, Judge Peterson? It's Thomas McKenna. Need you to perform a marriage. At midnight? Yes, sir. Boy, have you been drinking? No, sir. But I've got 3 days before Briggs takes my land, and I want to marry this woman before I lose the chance. Silence. Then footsteps on stairs. The door opened. Judge Peterson stood in his nightshirt and robe, lamp in hand. Miss Hartley, he said, recognizing her. You sure about this? Never been sure of anything. The judge studied them dirty, exhausted, determined. Come in then. The ceremony took 5 minutes. The judge's wife, roused as witness, stood yawning in her wrapper, no flowers, no music, just words spoken plain and true. Do you, Thomas McKenna, take this woman? Yes. Let me finish, son. But Thomas was already pulling out his mother's ring, the one Martha had glimpsed in his drawer. Thin gold band, worn smooth. He slid it on her finger. Perfect fit. Do you, Martha Hartley? Yes, the judge sighed. I now pronounce you man and wife. Thomas kissed her again, softer this time, but no less hungry. The judge's wife smiled despite her exhaustion. The license, Judge Peterson said, filling out the paper. This makes it legal. Briggs can't touch this. They rode home as husband and wife, the license tucked safe in Martha's pocket. The house stood dark where they'd left it, but as they dismounted, Martha noticed something. The front door stood open. Inside, on the kitchen table, another white envelope, but this one was different. Heavier paper, official seal. Thomas lit the lamp, opened it. His face went pale. What is it? He handed her the paper, sheriff's notice. The debt had been called in early. They have 1 day, not 3. Martha read. How? Briggs owns the sheriff. Thomas slumped in his chair. We can't get to Denver and back in 1 day. Martha studied the notice, Something was wrong. The date, the seal, she held it to the lamp. There. The same flaw she'd seen in Briggs's forged water documents. The seal. Too smooth. Thomas. She grabbed his hand. This is fake. Briggs is buying time. For what? Through the window, she saw riders approaching again, but this time she recognized the lead horse, Margaret. And behind her, a man in a banker's suit she'd never seen before. The real Denver creditor had arrived. The banker dismounted slow, deliberate. His suit showed travel dust, but the fabric underneath spoke money, Denver money. Margaret stayed on her horse, watching. Mr. McKenna, the banker removed his hat. Charles Morrison, Denver First National. Thomas stood. Martha felt his weight shift. Ready. Bit late for banking business. Irregular circumstances. Morrison pulled papers from his coat. I need to discuss your brother's accounts. His debts, you mean? Morrison frowned. Debts, Mr. McKenna. Your brother had no debts with us. The kitchen went silent except for the lamp wick hissing. Martha's hand found Thomas's. Briggs showed papers. $800 owed. Impossible. Morrison stepped into the light. Your brother paid his obligation in full 6 weeks before his death. I have the receipts. He spread documents on the table. Real bank papers. Proper seals. Martha recognized the quality immediately, nothing like Briggs's forgeries. Samuel's signature on the payment receipt. Paid in full. Dated 2 months ago. Then why are you here? Thomas asked. Your brother left something in our safety deposit. Instructions to deliver it personally if anything happened to him. Morrison produced a leather pouch. He was quite specific. Said you'd need this to protect the land. Thomas opened the pouch. Papers. But not money. Martha leaned closer, read the top document. Depositions, she said. Sworn statements. Your brother spent his last weeks gathering evidence about Harlan Briggs. Morrison's face hardened. Forgery. Claim jumping. Intimidation. Names. Dates. Witnesses. Margaret dismounted then, came into the light. That's why he wanted those letters, the ones Samuel had. Evidence of Briggs's blackmail schemes. You knew. Thomas turned on her. I knew Samuel was gathering proof. Didn't know he'd finished. She pulled an envelope from her coat. This came for him after he died. From Morrison's bank. I kept it. Martha took the envelope, opened it. Bank statement showing Samuel's final deposit $800 cash. Source listed as H. Briggs Payment. Blackmail, Thomas said quietly. Samuel was blackmailing Briggs. Reverse blackmail, Morrison corrected. Briggs had been extorting your brother over some Denver trouble. Minor gambling debt Briggs bought and inflated. Your brother turned it around, gathered proof of Briggs's crimes, demanded payment to keep quiet. And Briggs paid. Had to. The evidence would have hanged him. Martha studied the documents. But Samuel died before he could use this. Shot himself the night Briggs figured out the game. Margaret's voice came out flat. I was here. Heard them arguing. Briggs said he'd destroy everyone Samuel loved if the truth came out. Your brother chose to die rather than risk Thomas. Thomas sank into his chair. Martha kept reading witness statements from ranchers Briggs had cheated. Forged documents he'd filed. Even murder. A man named Patterson killed over water rights 10 years back. This ends Briggs, she said. If it reaches the right hands. Morrison gathered the papers. I'll take these to the federal marshal in Denver. But Briggs has friends. He'll run when he realizes. Hoofbeats in the yard. Many horses. Riding hard. Through the window. Torches again. Briggs's voice. McKenna got the real sheriff this time? Thomas grabbed his rifle. Morrison backed against the wall. Margaret pulled a derringer from her boot, unexpected but not surprising. Mr. Morrison, Martha said quickly. How fast can you ride? Fast enough. Take the evidence. Go now. Back door. She turned to Thomas. We buy time. Let them think they've won. Thomas nodded. Morrison gathered the documents, slipped out the back. They heard his horse moving quiet through the darkness. Martha unpinned her hair, mussed it, pulled at her dress collar. Margaret, you were right about one thing. Men see what they expect. She walked onto the porch, Thomas behind her. Briggs sat his horse with 6 men, the sheriff among them. Their torches made noon of midnight. Mrs. McKenna. Briggs's smile turned nasty. Oh, yes, I heard. Midnight wedding. How romantic. Mr. Briggs. Martha let exhaustion show in her voice. What now? Debt collection. Legal this time. He waved papers. Real sheriff, real warrant. The sheriff dismounted. Thomas McKenna, you're under arrest for assault. He's also defaulting on debts, Briggs added. $800 due immediately. Martha stepped forward, let the torchlight catch her loose hair, her disturbed clothing. Mr. Briggs, perhaps we could discuss terms. His eyes traveled over her. What terms? I've reconsidered your earlier offer about earning money in town. Thomas made a sound. Martha pressed back against him. Trust me. Briggs leaned forward in his saddle. Have you now? A woman must be practical. She moved closer to his horse. $800 is considerable, but I'm sure accommodations could be reached. Martha, no. Thomas's voice, perfectly shocked. She turned to him. We have no choice, Briggs laughed. There's the truth of marriage. McKenna, women always show their real nature eventually. Martha reached up toward Briggs. Help me up. We can discuss this somewhere private. He reached down. The moment his hand touched hers, Martha yanked hard. Briggs tumbled from the saddle, hit the ground, gasping. His men drew guns, but Margaret had her derringer against the sheriff's head. Everyone calm down, Margaret said pleasantly. Martha planted her boot on Briggs's throat. Mr. Morrison's halfway to Denver by now. With every document Samuel gathered, your forgeries, your murders, everything. Briggs's eyes bulged. He clawed at her boot. You can run! Martha continued. Take your horse. Ride hard. Maybe reach Mexico before the federal marshals come. Or stay and hang. Choose. She lifted her boot. Briggs scrambled up, stumbled to his horse. His men watched, confused. Where you going? Mr. Briggs? The sheriff asked. But Briggs was already spurring his horse, disappearing into darkness. His men looked at each other, then followed. The sheriff stood alone with Margaret's gun at his head. I was just doing my job, he said. Do it elsewhere, Thomas suggested. The sheriff backed to his horse, mounted carefully, rode away without looking back. Margaret lowered the derringer. Well, that was satisfying. Why help us? Martha asked. Because I owed Samuel that much. And because... She looked at the house. This place deserves better than Briggs. She walked to her horse. I'm going back east. Real east this time. Margaret, Thomas called. Thank you. She mounted, looked down at them. You two might actually make it. You're both too stubborn to quit. She smiled. First genuine one Martha had seen from her. Be good to each other. She rode off. Martha and Thomas stood in the yard, dawn starting to pink the mountains. You pulled him off his horse, Thomas said. You backed my play without knowing what it was. We make a good team. Yes. Martha turned to him. We do. 6 months later, Martha straightened from the garden row, hand pressed to her aching back. The beans were coming in heavy, better than she'd hoped. Beside them, tomatoes climbed their stakes, green fruit already forming. The corn stood shoulder high, silk starting to show. You'll hurt yourself working like that. She turned. Thomas stood at the garden gate, holding lemonade. He'd built the gate last month, tired of stepping over the fence rails. I'm fine. You're stubborn. He handed her the glass, cold from the root cellar. Mrs. Whitmore's at the house? Martha nearly dropped the lemonade. What? Your former employer. From St. Louis. Quite a rig she came in. Martha looked down at herself, dirt under her nails, dress patched and repatched, boots that had seen better years. I should change. No. Thomas caught her hand. Let her see you as you are. They walked to the house together. Mrs. Whitmore sat rigid on the porch, her traveling suit immaculate despite the journey. When she saw Martha, her mouth tightened. Martha, you look weathered. Mrs. Whitmore. Martha didn't sit. What brings you to Colorado? I need you back. The children miss you terribly. My husband insists I rehire you. Your husband insisted I leave, as I recall. Color rose in Mrs. Whitmore's cheeks. That was a misunderstanding. Was it? Mrs. Whitmore's composure cracked. I'll double your wages. Triple them. Please. The last 3 governesses have been disasters. Martha felt Thomas's hand warm on her shoulder. I'm not a governess anymore. Then what are you? Martha looked at her garden, the house with new curtains she'd sewn, the man beside her who read poetry in the evenings and brought her wildflowers in the mornings. I'm home. Mrs. Whitmore stood. You were desperate when you left. Nowhere to turn, and you choose this wilderness. I was desperate. Then I found where I belonged. This is foolish. This is mine. Martha's voice stayed calm. This land, this life, this man, mine by choice, not circumstance. Mrs. Whitmore left without goodbye, her fancy rig raising dust down the mountain road. Thomas pulled Martha against him. Triple wages, he said. That's considerable. Is it? He kissed her temple. No. That evening they sat on the porch, watching shadows stretch across their valley. The lamp glowed through the windows behind them. Thomas had built a second rocking chair, placed it close enough their hands could touch. Letter came from Denver? Thomas said. My cousin's boy. Parents died of fever. The one in Nebraska. 8 years old. Nowhere to go. Martha threaded her fingers through his. There's the empty room. Be a big change. Everything worth having changes us. Thomas squeezed her hand. Inside the house, the lamp flame flickered, throwing warm light across floors Martha had scrubbed smooth, walls Thomas had patched and painted, a home built from broken pieces, stronger for the mending. When? She asked. Stage brings him Tuesday. Martha smiled. I'll air out the room, maybe paint it. Blue, I think. Boy might not like blue. Then we'll paint it again. They rocked in comfortable rhythm, no need for words. Somewhere in the garden, a mockingbird started its evening song. The beans would need picking tomorrow. The fence still needed fixing. There was always work. But for now, they sat together in the gathering dark, 2 people who'd been told they were winter itself, finding summer in each other's warmth. The lamp burned steady behind them, a beacon that said, here is a home, here is a choice, here is a life built by hands that know work and hearts that know worth. In the distance, thunder rumbled, rain coming. Good for the garden, good for everything growing. 3 summers have passed since that night we faced down Briggs. The boy from Nebraska, James, he's 11 now, helps Thomas with the horses, helps me with the garden, calls us Aunt Martha and Uncle Thomas, though we've told him just our names would do fine. You asked me once what becomes of women like me, women deemed too old, too plain, too much themselves. I'll tell you, we become exactly who we were meant to be, just later than expected. We find men like Thomas who see worth where others see waste. We build homes from houses that echo with ghosts. We plant gardens in soil everyone said was dead. Mrs. Whitmore wrote again last month. Another offer. More money. I used her letter to start the morning fire. Because here's what I learned on this mountain. Love isn't always young and beautiful. Sometimes it's two people in their late 30s, hands rough from work, building something daily, choosing each other when easier paths exist. Sometimes it's teaching a boy to read by lamplight, or Thomas bringing me mint tea when my back aches, or sitting silent on the porch knowing words aren't needed. We're not a love story, we're a choice story. And every morning, we choose again. Disclaimer. This is a work of fiction created solely for entertainment purposes. The story does not condone, promote, or encourage any form of violence or harmful behavior. All characters and events are products of the author's imagination, and any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, or actual events is purely coincidental. The narrative explores themes of resilience and human connection in a historical setting, but should not be interpreted as advocating for any particular lifestyle or relationship dynamic. Readers are encouraged to engage with the content as fictional entertainment only,